Hello, hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Nintengems podcast, where we talk about Nintendo games both new and old. My name is Connor, and today I am joined by my eternal co-host,
Brayden. Hello.
Hello, Brayden. Thanks for joining me for this episode.
It's my honor to be here. I don't make it on often, but
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
I appreciate you carving out the time for it.
You got it. We got a good one for you.
For me?
We got a good one for the listeners.
Oh, well, I hope I can have some of it too.
You're part of it.
Oh, heavens. I'm so excited. What do we got today?
We have a two-part extravaganza here for you. We are kind of going to break the mold a little bit from, I guess, how we usually do things. We have been enraptured by a game that is not exactly Nintendo.
Shh.
Yeah, well,
keep it down.
Don't
say that so loud.
I know, it's very taboo, but we really feel compelled to talk about it.
Elden Ring.
Yes.
If you have approached the border, the walls of video game discourse, if the city of video game discourse, if you have approached the gate, even remotely, you have heard the people shouting about Elden Ring. From outside the walls, even.
That's right.
It's a big deal. It's momentous.
And both gaming-wise and culturally, because kind of like you said, whether you are gaming adjacent or not, I find it hard to believe someone in your life hasn't told you about it, or at the very least is playing it.
Right. Perhaps still. Like us.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Over a month out.
Mm-hmm. But that's not what this episode is, actually.
Not quite.
Hold tight.
Not yet.
Right.
For you are witnessing part one of our short little FromSoftware intensive.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Elden Ring is developed by FromSoftware, a developer called FromSoftware. But Elden Ring can't really be I mean, it can, but as FromSoftware fans ourselves, it really should be built up to, because it's a momentous game to come out because of all of the precedents that are set for it. And we feel it is appropriate to talk about a few games that FromSoftware has developed prior to them, specifically in relation to Nintendo.
Right.
We're doing our due diligence before we dive completely
off topic.
Yes. Off of the concept of our entire podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple games that are important in the FromSoftware discography.
Sure.
Gamography.
Maybe so.
As it were. The first of which...
That are absolutely Nintendo related. And so, yes, part one, we are Nintengems. Part two, we are non-Tengems.
We will lift the mask soon enough.
That's right. But welcome to part one of FromSoftware with Love.
Oh.
Ha. Connor came up with that.
Our Valentine's Day special.
Yeah.
Just in time.
Again, just a little twist on the mold. What I would call our gem of the episode, we're going to start with, because technically it's chronological order, and it will tend to build up to part two a little bit better. So we're going to jump back to the GameCube days. Yeah.
To a game that I feel like we've wanted to talk about on the show for a long time anyway.
Yes.
Because it's like a favorite from our childhood, and I mean, it kind of just so happens that it's a FromSoftware game, and it shares like nodules of DNA that would in the future become Dark Souls and Elden Ring and such.
Right. And it really fits the name of our show, because it's fairly obscure as well. Lost Kingdoms is not a household names by any means.
It really isn't.
But I don't know. I would love to know how Lost Kingdoms has sold. My light research was fruitless in that regard. But it is a gem. It's a hidden gem. So
yes, but I mean, you're not wrong.
We wanted to talk about it for many reasons, and it's I'm excited to finally be here.
It's just interesting just to like kind of look backwards for a moment. Like, now that FromSoftware has, I mean, not really a household. It's not a household name,
but it has created products that are.
Yes, right. And again, if you're adjacent to the gaming sphere, you know the games that they've made. They have made some of them are considered the best games of all time, presently, contemporarily. And with that, people have gone back and looked into the past to see like what else From has made, what else is from, as it were. And yeah, Lost Kingdoms isn't one that like stands out, which is interesting because I mean, we can go ahead and say it's a quality game.
It is.
And it's one of the few games from Software that is on a Nintendo platform at all.
Yeah, right.
Let alone like the GameCube.
I mean, do you know off the top of your head how many games there actually are for Nintendo consoles? Because there's Lost Kingdoms, there's Lost Kingdoms 2,
Dark Souls
Remastered.
Besides a few obscure Japan-only titles for the DS and like some other Nintendo platforms. As far as like the West is concerned, and again, like the ones that are like revisited in retrospectives and such, yeah, Lost Kingdoms has been sort of lost to time. And especially with all this revisiting, there's never been a remake or a remaster or heads or tails of one.
That's right. And I mean, I did mention a sequel, which I think we'll touch on, but it was such a good concept, and I think maybe we should just dive into what it is. But the fact that, yeah, it's been literally 20 years now since it released in 2002.
So what exactly makes Lost Kingdoms worth revisiting as we kind of circumvent talking about it directly?
Right. Yeah, so it is an adventure game that relies heavily on not quite trading cards, but it is a card-based battle system.
I would venture to call it a deck building game.
Yes.
It's and like an action RPG. I mean, well, action RPG, but your character doesn't really level up or anything. It's more like the cards, each card that you collect represents like a monster.
Sure.
And the monsters themselves have like different elements and do different amounts of damage, and kind of similar, to throw it back to Shin Megami Tensei 5, you can fuse and evolve these cards in your deck to like be stronger versions of those monsters.
Absolutely.
And this isn't a traditional like card battling thing either.
This isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not Pokemon, or it's not a card game.
Right. It's real-time battles.
You are observing your character, Katia.
I'd say Katia.
Katia?
I know you said Katia as children.
Yeah.
But we're adults now and we know better.
You're probably right.
It's probably Princess Katia.
I like that better anyway.
Of the kingdom of something?
From the kingdom of Arguil.
Ah.
And you are observing her from a third-person perspective. Almost isometric. It's odd because the map will never line up quite smoothly with the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, it's almost overhead. Isometric is right, and but you're exploring like these 3D environments, and it's got this like kind of dark, almost gothic fantasy setting, a little melancholy.
What would you call it? What is grimdark? Like, how far does that go?
That goes to, I would say,
like Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like something like, do you remember like Dark Sector or like the game Hatred?
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do actually.
That's grimdark. Grimdark speaks to like edginess.
Okay.
To like performative edginess. I feel like this is more like grim and also dark.
Sure.
Like it's kind of gothic. You know, it's not high fantasy. It's not like high traditional Western fantasy.
Right.
It's Western fantasy. It's not Japanese fantasy, but it's like it's a little more grim and melancholy.
Yeah.
And a little darker in tone.
Sure.
And kind of like Shin Megami Tensei, some of the monsters are like, I don't know.
They're lore-based, religion-based. They have mythological roots. Like, there's Cerberus, there's unicorns. They don't call them Pegasus.
Right.
But, they take a lot of inspiration from folklore and
Beelzebub, I mean.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that Beelzebub is a giant fly informed my interpretation of Beelzebub for the rest of my life.
Yeah, same.
Like,
I was like, yeah.
I was confused when he was other things in other
the
places.
Bible.
Yes.
Yes, same. So you have like this deck of monsters that you collect throughout the game, and it's not open world. It's you have like a map. There's
an overworld map.
Yeah, and you select different areas to, like, essentially dungeons to go into, and you explore these 3D areas.
And they're very beautiful. They're all very unique.
Yeah.
They're all, some of them are grassy plains, and they look great on the GameCube.
Right, and the game's running at 60 frames. It's, like, very smooth, beautiful looking game. Art direction is great.
Mm-hmm. The battles are where it really ends up shining.
Sure.
Because you are building your deck for these encounter battles that you will experience when you're in these levels.
Right. It's you're running around these levels, and they're pretty much empty. You're running around as Princess Katya in these, like, really labyrinthine open levels that truly, like there's nothing going on in them, but the battles are random encounters, kind of like your traditional RPG.
And the screen kind of blurs.
Yeah, and you go into like a battle screen,
which arena style, pocket arena, pocket dimension.
Yeah,
which, interestingly, it does take the area of the map that you are in and puts it in. Yeah, it makes it the battle terrain. And so, like, if you are near a crate while you enter, the random encounter happens, you can break that crate during battle.
Right.
Which doesn't always have massive effects or anything, but just...
I mean, it's just interesting that one can only assume that it's due to the limitations of the GameCube, that they had to, like, make the battle separate from, like, the whole overworld.
Sure.
And, like, that processing. But it is interesting that, like, there's still enough, like, foresight and intentionality in the level design that when you get into a random encounter battle, that small section of the map you're in becomes the arena.
Right.
By design.
And there are absolutely gameplay elements that they incorporate. Like, there are treasure chests that you can only reach by breaking those crates during battle.
Exactly.
And so that's awesome. It's brilliant puzzle design using the mechanics that they had in place.
Right. And so the battles themselves, you do get teleported to, like, this separate battle scene.
Mm-hmm.
And the battles take place in real time, which is, I feel like, it's the central gimmick. Right. Is it's a deck building game, but it takes place in real time.
Yes.
When you enter these random battles, there are monsters appear on the field. Enemy monsters appear on the field, walking around, attacking you.
Mm-hmm.
Full transparency too. I played it. Like, we have it, and we've had it for a long time. But you played it pretty
recently,
all the way through.
I played it in 2022.
Right.
And I spent all of 8 hours with it because, surprisingly, that's all it takes to beat the game.
Which was shocking to me to hear, because I remember it being so long and pretty hard.
I would have told you as kids that we spent hundreds of hours on it,
right.
Which, obvious exaggeration, but, like, I don't know. It was certainly probably harder as kids, as 8-year-olds when this game came out or whatever.
Sure.
But
I mean, I just remember spending as much time with it as, like, a Ocarina of Time or like a Zelda game, like a whole full adventure game.
Yeah. But it turns out these levels that we've kind of discussed, they can be pretty darn quick and straightforward.
And I remember them being so labyrinthine and, like, confusing too.
Some of them certainly are. 100%. If not confusing, then deliberately obtuse. You know what I mean? Just kind of repetitive, like, run to this corner and then run to this corner and then that corner. And so, like, if it wasn't a maze, then it was a
straight shot.
Yeah, but
how many areas are there? How many, like, levels?
Quite a few. I would estimate about 20. I don't have the number off the top of my head. There are, like, it's nice. There's a very clear quest line, but then there are some quote unquote bonus levels that unlock if you talk to people around the world. Yeah, it was very interesting to me just how quickly I made it through the game. Didn't take away any enjoyment at all. Is fantastic, but unexpected.
Sure. So the combat in Function, it's deck building, but it's in real time.
Yes.
But what makes it interesting is not only just like the variety of the monsters, but like just the way the combat mechanics work in Function. You can't attack. Princess Katia has no offense or defense.
Right.
You have 4 cards basically in your hand. Apparently, it's news to me. They're shuffled from your whole deck.
Yeah.
But you have 4 cards randomly pulled to your hand at any given moment, and they're mapped pretty like organically to like the A, B, X, and Y buttons on your GameCube controller.
Mm-hmm.
And each card will perform whatever action that monster does. And there's basically 3 different kinds of movement moves.
Right. Yeah.
3 different functions of monsters. There's a type that can be summoned onto the battlefield that end up moving independently and fighting.
And they are
monsters.
called independent.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the terms?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Okay. And then there's some that just like come out immediately as like an attack, like the Crystal Rose.
Weapon type.
And then there's some...
And which, those appear as if Katia is just swinging a sword immediately.
Yeah, it's like an immediate attack.
And the best example I can give is Lizard Man. Really, it's a horizontal cross chop across the body instantly.
You tap the button and the sword swings immediately.
Yes.
It's
and then he's gone.
Yeah, and it's the closest it gets to like Katia having like an attack button.
Right.
The independent,
mm-hmm.
quote unquote. You press the button and she tosses the card onto the field and the monster spawns.
And the Venus flytrap.
Yeah, or the skeleton.
Yes.
Appears on the field and starts fighting the enemy monsters.
And you have no control over it after that point.
Right. And then the third type, I guess if there's 3 types, there's a third type that, at least from my perspective, my memory,
mm-hmm.
it basically plays like an unskippable cutscene
mm-hmm.
every time. Like, for example, the Lycanthrope, the Wolfman, the Werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
You summon him, and it plays the cutscene of him being spawned, and he roars, and then he slashes right in front of you.
Yes.
It's basically a glorified weapon type.
Yes, it is. It kind of feels more like Katia's like transforming into them.
That's true.
But they are called summon type cards. And so, take that how you will. There's independent, weapon, and summon.
Sure. Okay, cool. And the summon kinds, I mean, the wolf person is
mm-hmm.
an example, but there's a fairy that heals you.
Sure.
There's the mind flayer that... So in all of these cards, when you use them, the weapon types specifically have multiple uses
mm-hmm.
per card. The summon types can last a certain amount of time on the field or a certain amount of health. But generally, every time you use a card, it gets dismissed.
That's right.
And you can run out of cards from your deck.
There is an invisible discard pile, and your deck starts with 30 cards. At the start of a level, you have 30 cards. But then... you can run out of those 30 cards by the end of the level.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't careful, if you don't use Mind Flayer, as you were just saying, to restore some cards from your discard pile, your graveyard, whatever you want to call it.
Mind Flayer, as its function, brings back your cards mm-hmm. for the rest of the level.
Yes. Also, you will find cards throughout the level that you can add to your deck at checkpoints, which... is really great game mechanic as well. Just the fact that, I mean, you're obviously going to have your cards expire as you move throughout, and to just be able to try out new things as you progress through a level, it feels like great progression design.
Sure, yeah. And like great balancing too, because it knows that you're going to be running out of cards, and so it supplies you with some more to use in the level.
Absolutely.
But the best part that I always, like the most exciting part, is the loot at the end of the level.
Yep.
Because every level ends with a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of cool boss monster.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the music in this game is great.
It really is.
The music in this game is awesome. So great.
If not actually good like melodies and tunes, then great ambiance and
great atmosphere.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I like just talking about the boss. Like the boss theme just like popped in. I'm in it.
Would you call those flutes at the top?
Yeah. Oh, it's good stuff. But anyway, every level ends with a really cool boss monster. But after you defeat it, you get your chance at some loot.
Yes.
It shows you like 6?
Yeah.
6 cards face down.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to choose, like, at the beginning it starts like 3, like choose 3 or so? No.
It depends on how well you did during the level.
Really?
You get a 1 to 5 star rank depending on how many cards you used, how much damage you took. It doesn't show you those scores, but I can only imagine that's how it calculates it.
Wow, I don't remember that. There's like
But
a
yeah,
ranking system.
So if you get 5 stars, you get to pick 3 of those face down cards. If you get 3 or 4, you get to pick 2, and then if you get 1 or 2 stars, you get to pick 1 of the face down cards.
Interesting. And
one of those 6 cards
is the boss monster.
Is the freaking boss monster.
And it's so cool. You're like, oh, you're just crossing your fingers. You're
Yep.
like,
I feel like this is more of an end of conversation thing, but like you can't replay the levels until you beat the game either.
really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah. So
Wow.
if you miss the boss, I mean, big whoop, the game's 8 hours long.
Sure.
You'll be there in no time.
And it's not like the boss monsters are like essential to completing. Like
no, sometimes they suck.
Some of them suck. Some of them, like the Mind Flayer, is a boss monster.
Mhm.
It's that's practically essential to beating the
Yes,
game.
at some point you need a Mind Flayer card in your deck.
Certainly. But none of them are essential. They're just really cool to have. And it's just
Yeah.
like, it's a good feeling to like beat the boss monster and then to get their card and be able to use their power.
You want to hear something really cool that I'm curious if you even know if it's a function. You may.
I would like to hear something really cool that I may not know if it's a function. I may.
You ever heard of card capture?
Yeah.
There is one more dynamic to this game that I used a whole lot, actually, during my modern playthrough, but as children, we underutilized tremendously.
I think I know about this.
If you damage a monster enough, a la Pokemon,
Get
if
them
you
close to death, but not quite.
correct, you can throw a card using a special button different than like your independent throw the monster out. You can throw a card at a monster and capture it. You can't do it with bosses, but if you see a cool monster, you can make it yours.
Do you have to sacrifice one of your own?
That's a good question. Like, I don't think you are transforming the thrown card into... I think you get to keep both cards.
Okay.
But you are discarding that card from your
for
deck
that level.
for that level.
For that playthrough. Okay.
Correct.
Interesting.
And so, that is a really interesting mechanic that they don't really explain very much throughout the game either.
Mhm.
They mention it once, but then, I don't know, you could totally miss it. We totally missed it
Yeah.
back then. And it's not huge either, but it's fun. It's absolutely one way to win a battle. It is a really good way to fill out your card list. There are 105 different monsters in this game. And so one of them is Skeleton, the second one is Poison Skeleton, and the third one is Steel Skeleton. So there's a couple different family lines like that, that reskins or something. But there are 105 monsters on
That's
this
a lot.
obscure
That's more than I
GameCube
expected.
game from FromSoftware in 2002.
Well,
Each monster, more or less...
well before like any sort of like major success from them.
Yeah, oh yes. And each monster, more or less, having its own function entirely.
Let alone animations and such, too.
Yes. I
And
mean, the
design.
skeletons do behave differently, I'll tell you that. It's a really neat game.
There are some more intricacies to the battle system, like the elements.
Yeah.
That I don't remember much from playing as a kid. But each
Sure.
monster kind of has like an elemental affinity, like fire, ice, or whatever.
Right.
I don't remember that coming to play a ton
So I did actually try
strategically.
Right. I tried to pay attention to that a little bit during this most recent playthrough, because the levels do inform you what type of monsters are going to be there. And so I believe it's a 4-way kind of circle,
Really,
where it's a 4-way paper rock scissors type thing.
fire, wood, ice, maybe water or something.
Fire, wood, water, and earth. Actually,
Okay.
wood
interesting.
and earth are separate, but in my mind maybe should be together.
Right.
But yeah, I don't feel like it played that much of a difference.
Because each monster, like in the real-time battle system, functions so differently that it's more so about like what
Executing the correct monster and card at the right time, more so
Yeah.
than elemental concerns.
Right. It matters more that you're summoning like monsters that will just like onto the field that will distract the enemies
Right.
more so than like using the right element against
Mm-hmm.
all of them.
Oh, we have failed to mention the mana as well.
That's another little intricacy that I did want to get into because I remember it being annoying.
It actually works really well in my opinion. I can understand how it could be remembered as annoying, but I do think it's effective. So essentially you start the game with 10 crystals, like Katya has 10 mana crystals, and each card might cost 1, 2, or 3. Like a skeleton is kind of good, so it's probably going to cost 2. And
So basically, like when you're using a card, you're not only expending the card, you're using some of your mana as well.
yes,
it's more than one resource, kind of.
yeah. There is certainly another resource management aspect in play here, and so you can't just spam cards. You
Right.
know what I mean? I think that's the best reason, explanation for it. Really, is just you can't toss out 100 cards at once and win the battle. And so your skeleton will cost 2. Your lycanthrope will cost 4. Do another lycanthrope, and you're out of mana. However, when you're striking enemies, they will drop these crystals. You pick them up throughout the battle. So you're kind of constantly refilling your crystals as you go.
There's an economy at play almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Which can get stressful because
You have to destroy monsters to use your monsters.
yes,
And what I do remember is when you're out of mana,
it uses your health. You can still summon cards, but it'll start taking from your health pool, which is when battles get really tight.
yeah, really tense. And that's cool because that's what I remember about like some of the visual cues, the design is that the cards in your hand will turn black and white instead of their
Yes.
full color when it's like you don't have enough mana to use
You can't
this.
afford to use this. You're going
Yeah.
to lose some health.
And I remember just like all of my cards being black and white because I didn't know any better. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And both your health and your crystal pool grow throughout the game as you collect the runes that Princess Katya has to go throughout the world to collect to dispel the black mist. The story is not necessarily inspired, but it's
functional.
It's functional and a little bit better than I would have told you, actually. Like, I mean, it's interesting. There are gravestones you can read throughout the world and people to talk to that will fill you in on the context of why you're in that level or what happened to this town that you're actually walking through. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like a live world, but soldiers will be like, oh, Princess Katya, what are you doing here? Like, we just lost this battle. You shouldn't be here.
Yeah, I mean, getting ahead of ourselves, but it's again, like there's some strands of DNA connecting tissue from Dark Souls. Like it doesn't force feed you the story. Like you're really just kind of dropping into these areas and like running through them linearly, but they're really rich areas. There's lots of lore in them. They're like very distinct visually, aesthetically locations, and you're going to them for a reason. And yeah, like there's a lot of them have like dying soldiers in them that you can talk to, and they're like, "What are you doing here? Where get out of here?" And like like gravestones and signs and stuff. Like there's world building there, but it's subtle, and you kind of have to seek it out a little bit, right?
Yes, that's perhaps one of the most delicious. You phrased that very well. That's perhaps one of the most delicious pieces of DNA that I think you've identified there. Is really just it's subtle storytelling, and
it's there if you want it. But ultimately, I mean, the game is about like kicking ass and playing cards. And,
with cool monsters.
And
listen to any Pokemon monster collecting episode. I'm a sucker for monster collecting, and that's what this is.
Yeah, but what's most important about the story, and truly maybe my favorite trope in video games, like of all time, is when you face a boss or an enemy that is you, like your equal.
Yeah.
And like
truly equal rival.
Sure, and depending on the game, and like just for examples that we covered, Wonderful 101, it's the Guyzok. It's like the people, like it's a rival team of 100 that you fight with that uses your same Unite morphs.
Oh yeah.
TBT. in Zelda, it's maybe like Girahim or Shadow Link.
Sure. Yeah. Shadow Link is that one.
Yeah, and
In my gut.
and in Dark Souls and Elden Ring, there are bosses, story bosses that are other players. And spoiler, fast forward, Dark Souls 3, the final boss is something like that. Spoilers. Anyway, Lost Kingdoms, there is a twice repeated boss fight that is against another card handler, card player.
Wielder, I think they might have called them.
Wielder?
I don't know.
Okay. And that's, all the boss monsters are super cool, and it's cool that you get them, but what really matters is that you fight another card wielder, and that's awesome. I love that stuff.
And she has cool cards, too.
that are better than yours.
Yeah. And what's different here, though, is you're not attacking the monsters that she throws out.
You're fighting her.
Yes. You finally get to use your monsters against another human.
It's not your monsters fighting each other. It's like you're trying to defeat her.
It is very cool. That's funny that you call it a trope, because it sure is. I would love to dissect that a little more.
Goodness, I could go on and on.
That's a concept.
It's a concept and a half, my guy. Yeah, I'll write a one-off about it someday.
Well, how about that multiplayer, though?
What multiplayer?
Are you serious?
No, I'm not. I remember the multiplayer. It was fun. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. I thought it was actually pretty decent.
Is it 4-player or is it just 2-player?
It's only 2-player. It's interesting. They actually banned some cards from multiplayer, like
really?
Mind Flayer. You actually can't use him. And then there's like one more probably game-breaking card that just wouldn't function in multiplayer.
Sure.
But you can still use like heals.
What I do remember about the multiplayer is that the GameCube was in a way that like that kind of generation of consoles was kind of underappreciated, is that you could bring your own memory card with your own character's deck.
Oh man.
And fight each other's decks.
Jesse, if you're listening, I miss you. Yeah.
Oh.
I had a friend.
Good times.
And man, he had the game, I had the game, we had the game,
And it's an obscure game.
It is. But we were able to battle decks.
Yeah.
Custom
and that's
decks.
Awesome.
Wild.
Because otherwise, if you're just playing locally, I guess, on a single memory card, it's just you're fighting the same deck, sort of, right?
You would be using my decks that I had built.
Yeah. Which is cool and still fun. Like, it's fun that there's a multiplayer, like a versus multiplayer mode at all. But like, that's such a cool concept that like you could be fighting someone that has their own deck with monsters that you don't have.
Character's name. You know what I mean? Like, you're fighting that other person. You can rename Princess Katya in the game. And so, like, yeah, you are literally fighting... That was rare for the GameCube.
Man, I don't even know if
Animal Crossing is one of the only other games that I can think of that...
I think there are a lot of, like, I'm thinking of like Sonic Adventure with like Chow stuff. I think there are a lot of games that did it. We've just forgotten.
Sure.
It's just like kind of like a lost art, a lost function of video games.
Yeah, I talk about e-readers. I talk about e-readers a lot. That's another lost, like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because you had to use that to unlock lots of different things.
And like, I don't know, just something like a DS download play. Like we could wax poetic about that forever, and like just like lost conveniences and functions of old video games.
Yeah.
But this is what Nintendo Gems is for, is it not?
Absolutely. I'm feeling pretty good about our Lost Kingdoms discussion thus far. I feel like I've given it the proper praise that I intended to. We've covered most of the game mechanics that make it what it is, What are we missing?
The kingdoms.
They're lost.
They must be found.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Lost Kingdoms 2.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like, I feel like we've been pretty comprehensive about most of the game without just like detailing the little things that are cool about it and getting too into it. Other than that, like, I don't know. Again, it's not been remade or remastered for anything.
Or
ever.
mentioned.
Or mentioned canonically by FromSoftware or Nintendo. I mean, here's hoping for something in the future, since FromSoftware is like the developer right now.
Right.
But yeah, it really lives up to its title. It's just kind of like a lost gem to time. If you can find a copy, how much are copies?
So complete copies are running about $50, which is
Wow, that's not nearly as bad as I expected.
I would say it is worth it. You can get the disc only. I'm actually seeing right now $30.
That's definitely worth it.
And so
this
like
is a game worth your time.
Yes, if you have a GameCube and $30 to spare, I swear you won't regret playing this. Short as it may be, there's replay value in recollecting the cards, in replaying the levels. Like it's a gem.
Yeah, let alone emulating. Sorry, what did you say?
Is that English?
What did you say?
I don't know.
I blacked out for a second.
But hey, this is all right, listener. This is a real life grovel. If you own Lost Kingdoms 2, and you are willing to part with it for, I don't know, less than the $100 that everybody on the internet wants, I promise you I will buy it from you and love it so much.
It will find a good home.
Lost Kingdoms 2 is a beast of its own that I'm dying to play, because you know what? They take out the pocket dimension.
Yeah, it is
like real time.
Like you don't go into battles. You're exploring this like the overworld, and
the monsters are there,
just, like, running around. Still deck based.
Yes.
Braden is emphatically vibrating.
Like I am dying to play. And you want it? What's so weird? So weird. I'm confident we
rented it,
but I only remember one scene, and I swear it was for the PS2. Which is so weird. It's not for the PS2. It's GameCube only.
That is correct.
Yeah,
I mean, like that's kind of like I feel like 2. I mean, obviously 2 is twice the price of. I mean, the going price these days as the original for the GameCube. But I feel like 2 is just like more nebulous anyway. Like I feel like
it's much more obscure than the first one.
Yeah, which is so. I mean, it's wild that it got a sequel at all.
Yes.
It's about a different princess. It's a different setting.
Mm-hmm. It is a sequel, though, I believe.
And it's the same gameplay. It's still card-based, deck building, but instead of you entering these battles, it's like all the enemies are running around the world in real time. It's interesting.
It gives me the heebie-jeebies to think about. I really, like, it's...
What if it sucks?
That's fine. I just need to know. It is at the top of my want to buy list. You know what I mean? It is my
golden goose.
It is my grail at the moment. Yeah. And I mean, it's not that expensive compared to some other games, but just $100 for
something that's so forgotten.
Yes,
it's not like it's like Panzer Dragoon, like Saga or whatever the $3,000 one is.
Yeah,
you know?
No, I feel like I'm gonna stumble upon it somewhere for a reasonable price.
I'm looking to stumble with you.
All right.
I'm keeping an eye out. I promise.
I appreciate it, and listener, if you will too. Hey, keep me in the know.
For sure.
Should we stumble into our next stepping stone of FromSoftware?
I would love to, but I do kind of have to pee.
Okay.
For realsies. Do you want anything? Do you need a beer?
Man, I really am loaded.
Beyblade's cool. Beyblade is cool. I've never played a Beyblade video game.
Me either, but I just mean real Beyblade's cool.
Right.
Like, I wish it wasn't called Beyblade. I wish it was like marbles. I wish it was more generic and it was just tops, and then we could battle tops and it wasn't nerdy.
I think that probably exists too, and it's probably more nerdy than Beyblade. Dare I say.
Before we stumble on, I looked up prices of Lost Kingdoms 2, and it's $150 now. I bet it's Elden Ring's fault. I'm pissed.
When was the last time you checked?
Before Elden Ring came out. Like, I mean,
Really? Like shortly before, or like...
Yes. I mean, I check Facebook probably weekly. I just Google Lost Kingdoms, or I just search Lost Kingdoms 2 on Marketplace, hoping it's like in a lot or, something. But
that's crazy.
Yeah, the cheapest one I see in my quick search now is $150.
Wowie wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Listeners, if you've got a collection of GameCube games in your closet or in your attic that you haven't looked at, double check for us. Mm-hmm. We will buy it.
Do something.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm in it too. I want this game as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us continue to stumble, shall we?
Let's do it.
So, Dark Souls, man. What do you say about it? Because I'm about to have.
That's right. Okay.
I could have. I mean, so
stop. Let me try. I'm going to include you though.
I'm standing back.
So Dark Souls is a series that I am much less familiar with than Connor. It has formed a genre that if you're a nerd, you are aware of. If you're not, we will explain. But it is a foundational game to what gaming is now in the year 2022, and I imagine for more years to come than I can imagine. Dark Souls came out in 2011. Thank you, Connor, for reminding me. And again, I am much less familiar with it. I have played Dark Souls, and I have played Dark Souls 3. I skipped 2, and I have beaten none of them. I then, a few years ago, played Sekiro, which is in my top 10 games of all time, and then we've played Elden Ring. I just wanted to kind of lay out the difference in experience here, because Connor's about to take off into the stratosphere about Dark Souls and the impact it's had on his life, because, I mean, I don't know, I think it might be his favorite game. I'm not sure. I don't know if Dark Souls 1 is. I think I'm good. You can go. Did I give you a cue to start off on? Like a good foothold?
First of all, I just want to acknowledge how much it warms my heart to hear that Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, is in your top 10 games of all time. Maybe.
I think so.
That's wonderful to hear. Sekiro, we'll get into it. Probably in the Elden Ring episodes.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Sekiro is...
Stay tuned for Elden Ring, because I have Sekiro thoughts to bring into that.
Oh my god. Like Lost Kingdoms to Dark Souls to Elden Ring is skipping so many steps of the FromSoftware process. Sekiro is a game from FromSoftware and from the same director as the Dark Souls and Elden Ring. In between those two, and it's a wonderful game. And again, warms my heart to hear you say that it's so highly regarded, because
unfortunately it has never touched Nintendo consoles, and I don't foresee it ever making it.
Probably not. Yes, everything Braden said is true. It may very well be my favorite game of all time, singular game. It won the... Do you know what I'm referring to when I say like the joystick greatest game of all time award?
No, I guess I didn't know about that. What year was that?
Last year.
Named? Wow.
2021. Dark Souls was named Joystick, like joystick with a Q.
Yeah.
Their greatest game in gaming history award.
Mm-hmm.
Award accolade.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Was it a list? Did they, make a top 10 or top 50 or anything?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't
But
remember.
it won.
Yes.
It was it.
Whether it was like a list or it was like a, hey, we're at like the 5th decade of video game history, let's like make a wrap up. I don't know what their reasoning for it was, but Dark Souls 1 made their greatest game of all time. And that's just one publisher.
Sure.
But again, if you go to Wikipedia and you go to like Dark Souls, and then it's like Dark Souls is a game release, whatever. The first thing is Dark Souls is considered one of the greatest games of all time, widely. Sure. All that being said, Braden, do you remember where you were roughly fall of 2011? October, November, September. What year of high school were you in? What were you doing? What were you looking forward to?
That was my senior year, actually. I graduated in 2012, so that was the fall before I graduated. I was, I don't know, having a good old time. Dark Souls was not part of my everyday life.
So true. It was not part of many people's everyday lives. Do you know what was? Dark Souls came out October 2011. Do you remember what came out 11/11/11?
Holy cow. That's
Yeah.
Skyrim.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Dark Souls was a blip when it came out.
Oh my gosh.
Dark Souls was a flash in the pan when it came out. It came out originally for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, not even PC yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just the two consoles. It was a weird sequel, spiritual successor to Demon's Souls, which came out in 2009, exclusively for the PlayStation 3, and was considered a failure. Demon's Souls was a failure.
Really?
Initially.
Sure. I mean, I believe that.
And until Hidetaka Miyazaki, who directed Demon's Souls,
Mm-hmm.
Demon's Souls got like a little more traction as time went by, closer to 2011.
Yeah.
And Dark Souls in 2011 was critically mostly acclaimed. It was well revered. It got mostly positive scores, mostly. But the main thing is that it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that just sounds so... People just like dismiss that these days. Everything is... If something is too tough, it's the Dark Souls of something.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Cool. Yes.
Dark
okay.
Souls is a cultural cornerstone.
Now,
if some like
I was going to say, in what regard do they dismiss it?
Yeah,
because
like-
yes,
but also like gaming, like the gaming landscape, difficulty, challenge
mm-hmm.
is something that's so matter of fact. It's so,
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, yeah, you're gonna die 1,000 times before you beat it. That's just how it works. It's a Zelda game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still accessible, but it's tough as nails, and that's just how it is.
Yep.
In 2011, the month before Skyrim came out, and itself revolutionized gaming
Sure.
for a decade. There's still not a new Elder Scrolls.
Right.
Since then.
It is.
I mean,
yeah.
Elder Scrolls Online, whatever. Doesn't count. Gaming, like, it's just, like, in the same way that we just talked about memory cards and the GameCube and, like, those old, antiquated innovations that we don't have anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the cultural gaming landscape was just different 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And this notion of a tough as nails game wasn't marketable.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of
that
like...
was a mode that you had to select.
Right.
That was
yeah.
an option that you signed up for. You wanted to play very hard mode, one hit kill mode.
And it was a mode mostly relegated to the PC gamer audience.
Mm-hmm.
The PC gamers were like
Hardcore.
as it were. Like hardcore, I would maybe like there's more than one definition. At the
Yes.
time, a hardcore gamer could have been somebody that loved Call of Duty. Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare.
You're so right.
At the time. You know what I mean? Black Ops.
Yep.
There are console hardcore gamers. Console games were casual games.
Mm-hmm.
They're filled with tutorials. They're cinematic experiences. There's nothing like... It's so hard to understand in retrospect, if you weren't there,
Mm-hmm.
just how different Dark Souls was when it came out. Because Skyrim hadn't even come out. And Skyrim's the most accessible... Skyrim is like, I don't know, maybe next to Minecraft, like the most sold game of all time, probably. Skyrim.
Sure.
A month before.
Mm-hmm.
The game that everybody's played, even non-gamers.
Yeah.
Next to Minecraft. Or Mario. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo Gems. All that to say, I got Dark Souls on launch day. On launch.
Look at this cool kid.
Look at me go. I didn't play Demon's Souls.
Yeah.
I'd heard of it. We've never owned a PS3.
Yeah.
We both have a PS4 now.
Mm-hmm. And a PS,
Yeah.
olds.
Right. But we've never owned a PlayStation 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I miss Demon's Souls. This is my only caveat to everything that comes from now, is I still haven't played Demon's Souls.
Even the remaster?
Even the remake. Because it's PS5 only, and we can't do a PS5.
Yeah.
I would love to. Oh my god, I would give an arm and a leg.
Mm-hmm.
However, I haven't played Demon's Souls. Dark Souls was my first Souls game.
And launch day.
And launch day, yeah, and I got the limited edition. I still have the art book
I recall.
on my shelf
How did you know?
because it looked cool.
No, but I mean, like, I don't know. It was that obscure, and it's not like you were like, "Oh, FromSoftware made Lost Kingdoms, and I like
Sure.
that game."
Oh
I'm
no,
gonna
I
get
didn't
it.
know that at
Like-
all.
Really, it just looked cool. You think?
Because it's my kind of game.
You were 16. How do you know?
Because it's my kind of game.
Okay,
I was
and
16, but I was playing
Monster Hunter, Super Meat Boy,
Monster Hunters. Yeah, Super Meat Boy. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
That's exactly when it came out.
Uh-huh.
Is like this very, very beginning. Dark Souls came out at like concurrently with this like the very beginning of this slope upward with the indie game scene, where retro styled tough as nails platformers
Yeah.
were starting to become vogue.
Mhm.
Super Meat Boy, I Want to Be the Guy, kind of a dime a dozen.
Sure.
Cave Story, Shovel Knight wasn't far off.
Mhm.
Not that was like super tough.
Celeste is more modern, but a more
Yeah.
modern interpretation.
Right. Yeah, like these retro style, like retro sensibility, if nothing else, if not retro styled
Mm-hmm.
games that had this design sensibility of games from the 80s and some 90s, where the replay value comes in their short, tight package, but you die a lot.
Yeah.
And they require a lot of finesse and replaying levels and challenges until you get good enough at it
Mm-hmm.
that you can conquer it. This really, really
repeatedly, which is absolutely old-fashioned.
Very.
Take the NES. I mean,
Exactly.
you can't continue. You have to restart every single time, and you don't beat the game until you can beat the game the whole way through in one try.
The original Super Mario Bros. Was intended by design from Shigeru Miyamoto himself for everyone to be able to pick up and play and enjoy and beat with enough time.
With enough time.
Right, you know what I mean?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
it's a game you spend $60 on, and that's your game for a while.
Yeah.
You know? And you that's what you played level 1-1 over and over until you can beat it without flaw.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how games were. And that was a sensibility that was lost by 2011 in the public.
The Ubisoft model.
The Ubisoft, I mean, I'm not going to look it up right now. I don't even know if Far Cry 3 was out yet. Assassin's Creed was on its way, obviously.
It definitely was out. Assassin's Creed was. That
Sure.
is.
Yeah. I mean, the Ubisoft, like, that model was certainly starting
Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, this, in the public sphere, gaming was, I mean, I don't know, it was generally very casual.
Uh-huh.
Console gaming.
Yeah.
But again, so I like those retro sensibilities. I
Mhm.
like challenging games. I like games that test your skill and your mettle. I like games that you really have to dive in and like understand
Mm-hmm.
to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Monster Hunter. And I'd played a lot of Monster Hunter by this time. And Dark Souls is clearly extremely influenced by Monster Hunter. And that's what I heard about it. I was like, here's this like not AAA big budget game,
Mm-hmm.
but like big budget enough that it's multi-platform.
Yeah.
It's like big in concept,
Yes.
and big in execution. This large fantasy game
Mm-hmm.
that's tough as nails. And like that, at that time, nothing like that existed. Nothing. Dragon's Dogma was not out.
Really?
That was the next year.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
That's crazy.
and Dark, like Souls-like is a genre now. That's a
Mhm.
genre.
Yep.
It's crazy. Anyway, yes, 2011, October, I got it on launch day, and I loved it. I loved it then, still love it now.
Have you played every iteration of Soulsborne
Yes.
since, besides Demon Souls?
Yes.
So that's Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3,
Mhm. Bloodborne.
Bloodborne, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, and now Elden Ring.
And now Elden Ring, yeah. There is, arguably since Demon Souls, now definitely since Dark Souls, there has been a new template for the FromSoftware game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Their gamography, as we earlier said,
To coin a term.
yes, it's a funny shift because they have they've been around for a long time. FromSoftware has made a lot of games. Armored Core,
Yeah, and that's
Like-
something that we haven't really touched on.
Mhm.
Is like, but even before Lost Kingdoms, and like even anything from like basically the majority of FromSoftware's output pre Dark Souls all the way to the beginning.
Who cares?
Is mostly Armored Core.
Yes.
Armored Core is a mech game series. It's mostly for PlayStation. Armored Core is a game where you play it's
a giant robot. And You're blowing up other giant robots.
It's a mech game. It's sci-fi and it's generally tough as nails, but it's just different audience completely.
Yeah. Or Lost Kingdoms-esque Lost to Time.
Right, exactly. Eternal Ring, Evergrace. FromSoftware has made many games for random consoles, Lost to Time, mostly Armored Core. And so again, despite Lost Kingdoms, Demon's Souls was a shift change. Hidetaka Miyazaki was the director for that game. And it shows because he was the director for every other major FromSoftware game to come after that.
Right.
Dark Souls 1, 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Elden Ring. Did you notice I missed one in there? Dark Souls 2.
Really?
Is infamously not directed by Miyazaki. And it shows. Isn't that strange?
Is it worth diving into now why that is? Why he wasn't a part of it?
I actually don't really know the why.
Uh-huh.
Maybe he was working... They might have been in like the heat of Bloodborne by then, probably.
Interesting.
For PS4. Maybe. I'm not really sure the why exactly. But it's certainly worth diving into like what makes it different because it's palpable.
Mm-hmm.
It's still good, but it's palpable. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I guess I should explain what Dark Souls is. Right? Yeah?
I mean, yeah, take it slow.
Yeah. Well, and just to frame it completely, Dark Souls came out in 2011, as I've repeated ad nauseum. Was well received, but not popular. Far from popular, and also janky as hell upon release.
Okay.
Since then, it's been patched and remastered and such, and now it's marginally more functional than it was in vanilla stage, as it were.
Sure.
But when it was on the 360 and the PS3 at launch, a little janky. It got a large niche cult following over time because as this this general public sensibility towards like retro tough games and like the PC hardcore scene grew interest. The interest in Dark Souls grew, and so they finally announced a PC port of the game along with DLC for the core game.
Yeah.
And those released concurrently. The DLC for the console versions and the new PC version with the DLC included.
Nice.
Launched at the same time, and the PC the PC release is basically what vitalized the entire thing. That's the crowd that it needed.
Sure.
And the PC version of these games is basically what's practically understood as the canon versions at this point.
RIP PC Elden Ring.
Right. I have friends that are playing it on PC.
I've heard spotty things.
Sure. PS4 too, dare I say. I've had some issues.
I'm vibing, bro.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Dark Souls PC release initially was horrible. Horrible. That's kind of a trend for FromSoftware in porting and remastering their things, is they're really bad at it. They're really great at making games, but as far as putting them on different hardware, really bad at it.
Is it just because it's such a fragile system that they've created? Such a fine-tuned...
Really, yeah. I think so. I think the frame, the way with the multiplayer works and the always online kind of works. I think the framework is just so... The bones are just so shaky and so thin that porting it to a different platform is just I don't know. It just makes
you're making a different skeleton.
Yeah, it's like you've built a house of cards, but you have to take you have to move the table that it's on somewhere else. And you have to keep it intact. It's just it's probably going to go wrong. So that PC release, I believe in 2013 for Dark Souls.
Wow.
Right? 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the PC release, janky, and it took a day one fan-made patch to make it playable. And then since then, there has been Dark Souls Remastered, which is the official remaster from FromSoftware. where they released it on modern consoles, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, a new version for PC, and, most importantly, a version for the Nintendo Switch.
Heyo! Welcome to our show.
Crazy. It's unfathomable that Dark Souls is on the Nintendo Switch. It's bizarre.
You think?
Yes. Yes.
In what respect? That FromSoftware had come so far, like, hadn't touched Nintendo in a while, or just that Nintendo Switch is not the console for Dark Souls?
All of the above.
Okay.
The fact that FromSoftware, I mean, at this point, like, this is post Sekiro, I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right.
That they put Dark Souls on the Switch.
Yeah.
That FromSoftware has returned to Nintendo at all. I don't know, that Nintendo would deem Dark Souls like a game for the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
That Dark Souls, with this shaky framework, again, with the always online thing, like the way the multiplayer works, that, like, with this half portable console, that they decided they were just going to make it work, and that it kind of does.
Yeah.
And again, even beyond the framework, like even beyond the multiplayer network stuff, FromSoftware is just bad at porting their games. And the Switch port of Dark Souls is like the worst way to play Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like, the visual...
You're not the first I've heard that from.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's honestly nothing but perfectly reasonable.
I don't know. Because I think it's just a bad port job. I really do. Because...
Okay, fair. Because, yes, I think if the 360 can handle it, the Switch should be able to. So, yeah, it's probably a port job.
I agree. And Dark Souls 2 even originally came out on 360 and PS3.
Mm-hmm.
It's more known for its updated ports.
Yeah.
But theoretically, Dark Souls 2 could run on Switch, but I can't, like, if they tried, I feel like it would just, like, make my Switch explode.
Yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh.
It's just wacky that they made it work at all, despite the track record.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I'm allowed to talk about it on the show, is because it's on a Nintendo console. And there's a Solaire amiibo that I really want.
Oh my gosh. I wonder how much that runs these days.
Probably too much. I haven't looked into it. Again, listeners, if you find Lost Kingdoms 2 or a Solaire amiibo,
praise the sun.
Praise the sun. You know where to send them.
Yeah. Well, okay. You're a little bit cooler than I thought you were, being a day one Souls fan. And I'll give you that, without the Demon Souls. You know what I mean? Like, I think you count.
You're so generous.
It's cool.
It's weird.
Did you like it when you started it?
Yes. Oh my god. Yeah. Yes.
Even, did you were 16, probably 15.
Yeah.
Did you have, so you answered my question. You had fun, but did you suck at it?
Yes. I still suck at it. I still suck at from heretofore known as the FromSoftware game. Mm-hmm. This post Demon Souls like template that they've stuck with through Elden Ring. The Soulsborne game, as it were. I suck at them still.
Okay, cool.
Like, we'll get into it, but we're both still in the middle of Elden Ring with both over 100 hours, and we're like not near the finishing line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sucked at it, and I sucked at Monster Hunter for a long time too.
Mm-hmm.
I did suck at Dark Souls. I mean, I hear people beating Elden Ring in like 50, 60, 70 hours.
I feel sad for them.
I do too. But I mean, it took me like 150 hours to beat my first total run through of Dark Souls 1. Vanilla Dark Souls. On a console. No friends I knew were playing it. Mm-hmm. Nobody was playing it. I didn't know a soul that was playing it, but because everybody was playing Skyrim. Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I really did. I mean, I don't know if back then I would have said it was like my favorite game of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's taken... people aren't just following the hype, generally. It's a game that captures you.
It is that quality.
It's janky. It's a game of its time. It's been since improved, and obviously we'll get into that with Elden Ring, and like its sequels and such. There are parts of it that have been improved, but it is such a tight, admirably designed experience that if you choose to invest in it, it will capture you. It's just such a captivating gaming experience that captures so much of what I love about video games.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I recently talked about Undertale and how much I love it. I would say that Undertale, while and also almost like perfect gaming experience and like almost also, I mean, I don't know, one of the greatest of all time, just like a pinnacle gaming experience that like kind of hits all high marks of what you would want from an interactive experience.
Yeah.
I would say Undertale generally appeals more to my right brain, the sensitive parts.
Yes.
It's got a solid story with endearing characters, and it tugs my heartstrings.
Holy cow! These are some shower thoughts I had, but keep going.
Yeah. But Dark Souls is my left brain.
Yeah.
You know, it's got the deep gameplay with the wide breadth of the world and the possibility and the different character builds and the different ways to approach any situation and any challenge. And it's also got like the story, the characters, and the deep lore and world building that, like we said with Lost Kingdoms, is subtle
and sought out.
And yeah, you have, if you want to, it's there, but you have to seek it out.
Otherwise, you are Ghost Man fighting Zombie Man.
Exactly, yeah. You're killing this giant dragon whose body is made of teeth in the sewers for some reason. And nobody's
Which is cool, fine,
yeah.
Whatever, enjoy yourself.
Nobody's telling you why. So, okay. Dark Souls is an action RPG. It's heavily Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is a good jumping off point, because what Dark Souls, if Monster Hunter is all boss fights, you know, this is how I distinctly remember thinking about it when it came out, because this is really what it was at its time.
Okay.
Monster Hunter is all boss fights, you know.
Yeah.
It's the fights against the monsters, these big, huge monsters that are damage sponges that you fight for 15-20 minutes. But between that, it's just like you're following them. You're running around this empty open world and you're just kind of going after them.
Yeah.
Dark Souls is filling the gaps between all of the boss fights. It's these huge, damage spongy boss fights, but there's this actual like video game in between them.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are regular enemies and a story and development and world building between it all.
Yes.
Actually bothering to interconnect it.
And I gotta say, I feel like, so yes, terrific like analogy, but also I do feel like even comparing the Dark Souls bosses to a Monster Hunter monster is perhaps selling Souls design short. You know?
Yes, it is.
Monster Hunter is a beautiful and well crafted and exquisitely designed game, but Souls is still something else.
Yeah. It's an action RPG, not in the Skyrim way. It's different from Skyrim. It didn't take off like Skyrim because it's deeper and more complex.
May I throw out another word?
Do.
Roguelike is the word. Because there's something in there in that you restart each time you die, not the random map part.
Correct. Again, that like the dawn of that movement in the indie sphere. Because even roguelites and roguelikes were just starting to take off.
Binding of Isaac.
Maybe not even. Because Super Meat Boy had just come out. And that's the same developer, Edward McMillan. But you're absolutely correct. Like, again, that same like tough as nails retro sensibility. You hit your head against this challenge over and over and over and over and over until the wall starts to cave in. You're on the right track.
Yeah. Bits and pieces of other genres and designs.
And this is why Souls-like is a genre now. Dark Souls is an action RPG. A lot of people say Metroidvania because the world design is open. It's more in the way that like a Metroid game. It's truly like a Metroid game is open. In that a Metroid game, there's an intended path. And in Dark Souls, there's an intended path. It's an open world, but there's sequence breaking. You can easily take the wrong path,
100%.
but brute force your way through it.
Yep.
And accidentally do the thing you were supposed to do second first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They give you that option.
Completely. You just and they don't explain it.
Right.
It's an option at hand, and it's only explained through organic game design. So Dark Souls opens. Okay, the story of Dark Souls. Let's start there. The world, you can censor this if you want. The world is in a state of it is at the tail end of an age of fire. The world is in a cycle of an age of fire.
These words are intentionally ambiguous.
Yes. Long, like prehistoric times, there were dragons. That's generally kind of before the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then suddenly there was fire, and humanity sprouted, and they waged war against the dragons and gods and stuff, and there was an age of fire and prosperity, and humans and life blossomed. And then time passes, and this cycle continues too long. It gets corrupted over time.
Mm-hmm.
There's cycles of life and death is a very, very... And like the futility of life is inherent. It's interwoven into the gameplay design of Dark Souls.
Yep.
You find yourself, the player character, you are an undead. This cycle of fire... There's a phenomenon called the dark sign that starts appearing on people, and that causes them to be undead. When they die, they are reborn, and it just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
And
every time they die, they are reborn.
They're reborn. And this cycle of undeath, it causes people to go insane, and that's called going hollow. And this kingdom has been. This age of fire has gone on too long. This cycle of rebirth and prosperity has...
It's beyond ageless now. The cycle...
The flame is fading. There are embers, but it's fading. And you are this undead that is in the undead asylum where all these undead are corralled and hoarded. And you are but you open the game as the chosen undead. Someone chooses you. You are given an Estus flask, which is your main source of healing. You open the game in the Undead Asylum, and you play your way through the tutorial. It teaches you all these important mechanics, how the combat works, this visceral, timing-based, reflexive combat, much like Monster Hunter. And once you are out of the asylum, you enter the world of Lordran. Lordran, the realm of lords, where these 4 lords of Lordran are essentially guarding the Lord souls that you need to...
Into the cycle?
More or less.
Resuscitate the fire.
More or less. Because you can and you don't have to. This is kind of... I mean, it's spoilers for the ending, but like, you can choose to or you can choose not to.
Yeah.
Not everyone is in a state of... there are human characters... And they're beautiful little oases of humanity and levity.
Mm-hmm.
And their dialogue and their voice acting is 10 times better than anything in Skyrim.
Yeah.
They're much more memorable. Because they're so few and far in between and such precious little moments of
respite.
Of genuine humanity and like this world that is truly just like out to kill you.
It's depressing. I mean, like... It's beautiful as a game, but I mean, it's dull and often dreary, and
it's always
morbid,
dreary.
And just like
it's a dark, gothic, decaying fantasy world, Western fantasy like Lost Kingdoms,
and dare I say, Lord of the Rings. If you haven't thought of Lord of the Rings yet, that is a strong filter to kind of like. Put our words through.
It's Lord of the Rings, but it's Lord of the Rings, but if it was like a few millennia like too long.
Yeah.
Things
yes.
And with nothing changing. Like it's it's Middle Earth, but it's like everything is just in a state of to repeat myself. Like
the gods have revolted.
Everyone in Middle Earth has died dozens of times
Mhm.
and just keeps living.
Mhm.
And they go insane because they keep dying and dying and dying, and they go hollow and they just lose their minds.
Mhm.
And that's essentially the setting for the game, is like why everything's trying to kill you is because everything's generally lost their mind after this cycle of rebirth over and over. But again, there are these human characters, these NPCs that you meet that are these brief respites. And to circle back, at the outset of the game, you're dropped into Lordran. Your task, like the main objective, is vague.
Sure.
There is a guy at the very beginning that you don't even have to talk to, but he's like, "Hey, you're an undead, aren't you? You made it here, didn't you? Huh? Interesting. Well, there's these 2 great bells of awakening that you can ring if you want. There's one up here, and then there's one all the way down there. And that's it.
Have fun.
Yeah. Not even have fun. Don't even have fun.
Yeah.
That's all there is.
Right. We're sad.
Yeah. And from there are, let me think. There are like 4 directions you can go. And like 2 or 3 of them are dead ends. Like at some point are dead ends.
Valuable dead ends or dead ends? Like waste of time dead ends?
We'll get there. There's a critical path. There's a way you can go. But like this whole... the main objective of the game is to ring the 2 bells of awakening. For a while. That's the main objective. And then there's all this like auxiliary world building. These crazy locations. You gotta do
this to open this door, because the bell is that way.
Right. It's this whole, like the whole first half of the game is this Metroidvania constructed world. It's open. You can go any direction you want. Some areas you shouldn't and are blocked off at some point, and it's like, well, time to turn back. Some areas are clearly too hard for you to go to. Some bosses reincorporate things you've already learned from the tutorial. The world is just so intricately and expertly, vividly, masterfully designed for these 2 bells of awakening. And so you do those. You ring these 2 bells after 50 hours of gameplay. That's like the first half of the game.
Yeah.
And then the structure kind of, after this whole open world bit, funnels you into one spot.
Okay.
Then you beat this one spot, and then you collect the 4 Lord souls.
Interesting.
So I'm drawing a diagram in the air.
Yes,
There's this circle at the bottom that you do all of, and then it funnels you into this line at the top of the circle, and then at the top of that line, it splits into 4 directions.
That's a reverse funnel, but yes.
Maybe, sure. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing.
The paths branch.
The paths branch.
You can...
But also they don't. But also they do.
Most people will experience most of the same things throughout their gameplay, but in different order and to different consequence.
Yes. There's so much to say about this game. And I haven't even touched on how the game actually really plays.
You're a character, you run out, you die, and you restart at the last checkpoint.
Yes.
You can disregard that.
No, I mean, you're not wrong, but you're also not right. Yeah, just to reiterate, like, to cap off the story, like, yeah, the world is in a state of crap, and you're at the tail end of this age of fire, and everybody's miserable and dying all the time, and yeah, eventually you learn that your role as the chosen undead is to gather the 4 Lord souls and either link the fire to revitalize this age of fire that is fading.
Yep.
Or you can reject it and usher in an age of dark.
Okay.
And that's your 2 options for the ending. That's after the final boss. You get a slightly different cutscene after the final boss, and that's really all it gets you.
It's literally like is it a menu selection? Like, you know what I mean?
It is.
As if it was a dialogue choice or something? Practically.
It's every...
Go down this hall.
There's one final boss, and then after you kill it, him, you can either stay there and hit the bonfire, link the fire, or you can leave. And that's it. And it shows you like a 10-second cutscene, and then it rolls to credits. And that's it. And that's it. In 2011, that's all you get for 150 hours of bashing your head against a wall over and over and over and over and over.
Insane.
In retrospect, it makes perfect sense. It's great. It's Kino. It's
Don't
beautiful.
touch it.
Perfect. But yeah. So, what were you saying about hard game? What's the gameplay like?
Well, yeah. So, yes, we can talk about the gameplay. I do just want to really illustrate.
Reel me in. Like what do you what?
I really want to illustrate how much extracurricular activity Connor had to undergo to be able to explain that much context to the story. Because the cutscenes, the character interactions, while supportive to the story, did not tell him that. They did not use those words to that clearly explain what the heck is going on in this world. I refuse to believe.
I'll keep yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
There's an elaborate opening cutscene to the game before you even hit the asylum, before you enter gameplay, that explains all that lore about the dragons and the Age of Fire and Lord Gwyn and the four lords. But it's all nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
It's throwing names and terms and locations at you like you already understand them.
Right.
And then by the time you pick up the controller, you've already forgotten it all.
Uh-huh.
And you're in something that's almost completely unrelated. But by the end of the game, you've fought all of those lords.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want, you can read the item descriptions of all the equipment from all of the bosses you defeated and all of the...
It provides that context.
It's all there.
You just have to dig a little bit.
The lore is so rich and so deep, but it is not given to you through cinematic cutscenes. There's no 15-minute dialogue. There's no...
It's context clues.
Your character doesn't speak ever.
No.
Your character is barely a character. You are you. In this world.
You're a shell of a thing that's going to save the world.
Barely.
Yeah. And so so yet you said yes and no. I mean, credit where it's due. Yes, you gave a wonderful, I think, summation of where you roughly start the game, but at the same time, like, just, it's incredibly obtuse on purpose. It doesn't give you the answers of what you're doing. You do have to dig.
Definitely.
And
even then, I mean, like, even if you're not digging, and even though it's an open Metroid-style world where you can accidentally go the wrong way, the natural world design, it guides you to where you're going. Like that outset when you are dropped into Lordran, yeah, there's 4 or 5 different directions you can go, but there's one that is obviously the critical path.
Sure.
There's one through a graveyard of skeletons that keep coming back to life, and keep coming back to life, and keep wrecking you, and eventually you reach a dead end. There's a bottom path where there are ghosts that you can't even hurt.
Uh-huh.
They can only hurt you, and it's
intuitive game design.
I mean, many would agree. Obviously, there are some out there that it's not for, that get frustrated at the ghosts or the skeletons.
What do you mean I can't kill the ghosts?
Exactly.
Why would you put them at the start of the game?
But that's that left brain game design that I just love, is that it's like, that's the game design in its blueprint and its DNA telling you to not do it yet, to do something, try something else. And that's ingrained in every moment of the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Even the first boss you fight. So in the asylum, the tutorial boss,
mm-hmm.
the asylum demon, you are given gameplay after this whole intro cinematic. You pick up the controller, it teaches you some controls, and it drops this huge-ass boss in front of you with a huge health bar, and you can swing at it, and you're doing 1 damage.
With your fists, right?
With a broken dagger.
Okay.
So, basically.
Yeah.
And it has this huge health bar, and you're dealing 1 damage to it, and it kills you in 2 to 3 hits. Mm-hmm. That's that Monster Hunter also.
Sure.
To kind of rewind a little bit, this part of this whole Monster Hunter thing is that this huge damage sponge boss, that can kill you in 2 to 3 hits if you're not careful.
Right.
You know? That's everything in the game. Is like everything can kill you if you're not vigilant. It can kill you in 2, 3, 4 hits.
Even the dumb enemies. That...
even a rat.
Yeah.
If you're not careful. If you're not constantly vigilant. And so this asylum demon does the same thing.
It's a boss.
It's a boss.
It wrecks you.
And it wrecks you. But what you're supposed to do is run past it. In the tutorial, it teaches you that not always the best solution is to fight it head on. You are supposed to run past it through this door, do the rest of the tutorial, then the asylum, that tutorial circles back onto the asylum demon after giving you a proper weapon and also allowing you to do a plunging attack onto it. And that's how you start the game. And you beat the tutorial, you beat this tutorial boss that itself feels like a victory. And then that same exact strategy is replicated for the first boss of the game. The Taurus demon.
Insane.
It's beautiful.
Insane. Because that's so funny. I don't remember the asylum demon, but I remember the Taurus demon.
On the bridge.
And I remember dropping onto him.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It's brilliant. And that's potentially hours after you fought the asylum demon, because the road to the Taurus demon isn't fast. Potentially, depending on how long it takes you to learn the gameplay mechanics. The gameplay mechanics...
Or it.
Huh?
Or it. Or the game.
Are the game.
Or
the difficulty. The criticism levied against the main, if any, criticism levied against Dark Souls in the series is its difficulty and its high barrier of entry. However, anyone can play Dark Souls. Just like anybody, Miyamoto can play Super Mario Bros. 1 and beat it as it's intended. Anybody can pick up Dark Souls and beat it.
100% agree. It is a natural lesson of life.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, you don't know how to swim, practice.
Yeah, it's practice makes permanent, you know? And it's the same for the gameplay. It's an RPG as all get out. There is armor. There's different armor pieces for your head, your torso, your waist, and your legs. You can upgrade each armor piece. There are so many different armors. There are a zillion different weapons and weapon types, and each weapon has its own unique moveset with unique animations and timing. Each weapon takes its own amount of stamina from your stamina bar. You have a health bar and a stamina bar, and you have all your different attributes, your different stats, right? It's not like Skyrim. You can't in Skyrim. Skyrim's disgusting. Skyrim, you can pick warrior, rogue, or mage. Disgusting. Ew. And there's skill trees. Yucky. Ew. In Dark Souls, you have a currency called souls. And you get different amounts of souls from every enemy. It's basically experience points. Every time you kill an enemy, you get a
100 souls.
Yeah. From your regular undead soldier, you get 100 souls. From a rat, you get 50 souls. This is not literal. It's an example.
You beat the Taurus demon,
you get
probably
2,000 souls.
Yeah, you're rich.
Yeah. And you fight your way all the way to the Taurus demon. You've gotten 5,000 souls from all the soldiers you've killed along the way.
Yep.
Your souls are your currency that you can use to buy items and equipment from merchants that you encounter. You can also use them to upgrade your armor and weapons at a blacksmith. But they're also used to level up your character. And every time you level up, you can choose a single attribute to increase.
By 1 point, correct?
Yes. So say you start at level... oh my god, there's so much. Because you choose different classes at the beginning.
Yeah,
and they start at different levels.
The character creator is really interesting. Like, I mean, visually, you create your character and you can make him look like what you want. But there are different, like, classes that start you off with different attributes. But from there, you can kind of still go anywhere you want.
And that's what I've explained since Elden Ring's come out. I feel like I've sung that whole song and dance a dozen times. That it doesn't matter what class you start as. It matters what you pump your levels into.
Yeah.
It's an RPG. You know? You can't do everything.
Roll the play that you want a game.
Play the role, perhaps. More so. Maybe. But I know what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. Either at the beginning of the game, you choose your class. There's like a dozen classes, I think less. But the only difference is that they start with different stat elevations, different elevations, different attributes.
This is so stupid, but I'm thinking of The Sims. You have to, apply points to your Sims when you create them. Like,
man, I'll be honest, I've never played a Sims game.
Wow.
Myself.
Sure, but you put 5 points in charisma and 5 points in cleanliness, and then 2 points in this one. Except when you choose the class, it automatically assigns those points to your character.
Exactly. The classes. When you choose a class at the very start of the game, and it basically only governs what weapons you start, what equipment you start with, and where your stats generally lie. Like a warrior, you'll start with like a longsword and a decent shield, and your stats will mostly be in strength and dexterity. A sorcerer, your stats will mostly be in like intelligence. Less so in strength and dexterity and like vitality and stuff.
How many stats are there? Are there 8?
Man, from memory, I couldn't tell you. It's 8 or 10, maybe 12, even. There's vitality, endurance, strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, luck,
arcane.
No, see that, and that's where it gets tricky, is because every FromSoftware game, quote unquote, trademark, is different. Dark Souls 2 has different stats from Dark Souls 1, and 3, and so on.
And that's crazy because I have no idea when the magic meter comes in, because I mentioned that, and you know what I mean? Like it comes out in 2.
If I recall correctly, I don't know. Again, it's been so long, and they're all so different. They make such lateral gameplay changes. Yes, you're using your souls.
Come full circle, you're using your souls,
your currency
to level up, and you get 1 point to spend on these attributes.
Yes. So say this is, for example, you start with a warrior class, for example. Decent set of armor. You have a sword, a longsword, and a decent shield, and your strength and your dexterity, say, start at 10. And your character total level 12, let's say. And you have to acquire 3,000 souls or so to go to level 13.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend that 3,000 souls to put 1 point into any of the attributes: strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, vitality, endurance that we've listed, luck, and they all govern different things.
Sure.
So and then following that, you put that level in, you're level 13. The next time it takes 4,000 souls.
Mm-hmm.
4,000 of your currency. So as you get to higher levels, the requirement of the amount of souls, the amount of currency that you need, increases as you move along.
Mm-hmm.
But as you increase these different stats, these different attributes, they enhance different parts of your character build.
Yes.
If you're using a warrior with your longsword, every weapon scales with different stats. So a longsword will probably have scaling in strength and dexterity.
Yes.
Every weapon also has different grades of scaling. So a regular longsword might have a C scaling in strength and dexterity, but a giant warhammer might have an A rank in scaling with strength. But like a curved sword or like a dagger, something that's very flexile,
you're going to be higher in
dexterity. And the scaling means that like the higher that say you're using a big heavy two-handed warhammer that has A grade scaling and strength, that means the higher your strength attribute, the more damage it will do per swing.
every single weapon has its own individual scaling system.
And moveset and animations.
Mm-hmm.
There's over a dozen different classes of weapons. And each weapon has its own, like, there's spears, curved swords, long swords, hammers, daggers,
Whips.
maces, whips, shields, bows, crossbows, staves.
Did you say shields? Because
Maybe.
you can use shields.
Yes, you can use shields as a weapon. Yes, correct.
Fists.
And fist weapons. And this is just the first game. It
And
multiplies.
magic.
And magic, staffs, miracles, so on and so forth. And they all have different scaling properties. This is how you build your character, as you put your levels, you level up your character into particular attributes, strength, dexterity, depending on what kind of character you want to build.
And yes, that is a beautiful role-playing game, like, way to look at it, but also what kind of weapon you like.
Yeah.
Generally, what kind of way you like to swing your weapon, you're going to choose what kind of points to spend it on.
And it also goes for armor, because your armor... There's also a weight system.
Yeah.
Everything weighs a certain amount. Not like Skyrim. You can carry as many things as you want, which is a miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that they didn't make that part of the difficulty. You can carry as many things as you want on your person in your inventory, but as far as your equipment, what you're equipping, it has a certain weight. And the heavier the stuff you're equipping, the slower you move, the less you can dodge, the less effective your dodge, and the lighter you're wearing, the less defense you'll have, obviously, but the more agile you move, the faster you move
across the map.
Yeah, when you do a dodge roll, you have a lot of invincibility frames, and you move further, and so on. So that's where the character build stuff comes in. You can really, really hone in on a type of character that you want to play, which is tough for a first-time player. That was my mistake, and part of why it took me so long probably to beat it my first time is because I didn't really understand that. I was doing everything kind of evenly.
Yeah, I was about to say, you had every single stat at
just
10.
about. It was like vitality, endurance, strength, dexterity. I might want a little of faith just so I can use like this one spell. You know what I mean?
But then they're all crap level things.
Exactly. Yeah, I was too much of a jack of all trades.
You really do have to kind of decide how you want to play the game.
Right.
And I'll say, as a generally Souls noob, Sword and Shield is pretty standard. And will get you a long way, too. You know what I mean? There's absolutely nothing wrong with Sword and Shield.
Sword and board, baby.
I have never, ever played as a sorcerer in any Souls game. And it terrifies me at the thought of it. So, you know what I mean? I don't know what that says of me as a Souls player, but, it's something for everyone, and there's just so much room to find what you like and what really works for you.
There is so much versatility at play, and that's, this is just where the depth comes in, is all this world I've described, all these different attributes and stats that you can select at your own disposal, all these different kinds of weapons that all play completely differently against all these different bosses that require different strategies. It's a ridiculously deep game that is deceptively accessible. If that kind of meaty game experience appeals to you whatsoever, it can appeal to you. And I don't know, I feel like we've only glossed over it, but the difficulty, the challenge, the hard part.
Well, and I was going to use the word bosses.
Yeah.
The normal enemies are hard.
Right.
You have to be careful and learn their movesets just as much as a boss, but Dark Souls bosses really created something of... I don't know how to finish that sentence. Not a genre of their own, but just Dark Souls bosses are infamous.
The bosses are where your skill is truly tested. It tests your mettle. And I've thought of, there's just so much other stuff. The multiplayer. Everything in the game tests your mettle, but
there's
this
this
game is so deep.
There's this brief window of actual humanity, which is a theme in the game. You are fighting going hollow. Out of nowhere, a human shows up in your world to help you?
So, humanity. Right?
Yeah.
In and it's different in every Souls game.
Mm-hmm.
But in Dark Souls 1, there is another mechanic that I haven't even gotten to.
Yeah, and this one goes over my head. Tell me about it.
Humanity. You're playing as a hollow.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can return to human form. You're playing as like an undead zombie. He looks like he's made of beef jerky.
Yes, he does.
But you can turn back into human and not an undead zombie. And that's through a consumable item called humanity that are scattered throughout the world. They're not limited. Some enemies drop them after being killed randomly.
So you can harvest them.
You can harvest them. It's a very odd system. It's the kind of system that got more streamlined and refined as they made more games.
Sure.
It's a little weird in Dark Souls 1.
Uh-huh.
But you have these items. There's an item called humanity. And when you consume it, you add 1 to your humanity counter. There's like a number next to your health bar. That's the amount of humanity you have. And you can expend 1 of those humanity at a bonfire. I haven't even explained bonfires yet.
Mm-mm.
Bonfires are the checkpoints throughout the world.
Where you level up.
Yes.
You change your... you can change your weapons wherever.
Yeah, they're checkpoints. They're places where you can choose to rest and level up, recoup, upgrade your stuff. They're where you respawn when you die. They're checkpoints scattered throughout the open world. And you start at one and you fight your way to the next one, and so on and so forth until you get to the one that is closest to a boss fight. And, that's where you fight your way through them for the next hour or so. But yes, at a bonfire, at a checkpoint, you expend a humanity to return to human form.
Yep.
And when you are human, you can summon help. You can...
in the form
of other players.
Yes.
Or, in some particular cases, NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
They appear as signs on the floor.
Yeah, I've always found that
messages.
I've always found that very odd how the Dark Souls communication works.
Yes. The multiplayer component is like passive.
Yes.
It's not like...
you could play the whole game without realizing it's there.
More or less, yeah. It's not like Call of Duty where you enter a multiplayer match and you're all competitive.
Right.
Like, you're playing the main game, but you can opt into multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when you're playing multiplayer, you can put a summon sign down on the floor. And when you put that sign on the floor, other players can see your sign in their own world, and they can choose to summon you for help, and vice versa.
For said boss, not for the level.
Well, even for the level. I mean, depending on like the Dark Souls game, if you choose to be human at a bonfire, you might find summon signs near the bonfire.
Okay.
That'll help you through the level,
Fair.
and then furthermore through the boss.
Correction.
You
added.
You're not wrong. They're mostly at the gates of the bosses, because that's where people need the most help.
Yeah.
When you become human, these summon signs become visible.
Yeah.
For other players. So you can choose to summon help to help with bosses. However, the flip side of the coin that is extremely important is when you become human, not only can you summon help, but you invite the possibility of your world being invaded by another player unwillingly. When you are human, you are opening yourself up to other... You can, and other players can, just opt into...
entering other players' worlds to kill them. No other point. It is a violent act.
But, you get a resource in return.
Oh, sure.
You can opt into invading other players' worlds in return for humanity.
Yeah, totally. I didn't
And
mean to
other
imply
research.
that, like, oh,
And
you're killing
souls and
people.
currency.
Yes. I'm not. Yes, you get things for killing the other player.
It's a
but,
malicious act.
Yes.
There's a reward for it, but it's wholly to simply ruin another person's day. When you become human, you can in addition to helping others, choosing to help others, putting your summon sign down to be summoned into another player's world to help with a boss, and also summoning other players to help you with a boss that you've been stuck on.
Mm-hmm.
You also equally invite yourself to be invaded by other players or to invade other players' worlds to get more souls, to get humanity, to reap rewards.
Troll.
To troll, essentially.
It's a hard game. Get good. Sorry, I said it.
Somebody had to.
Yeah.
Somebody had to. It had to be brought up at some point.
Yeah.
Like, get good is like this weird shorthand for Dark Souls.
Yeah.
I think that we got to wrap this up. And I'm going to wrap this up because we're going to return to most of what I've described pretty much translates to Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Almost one for one.
It's insane.
This quote-unquote FromSoftware game, this template, has
evolved,
morphed somewhat laterally even. It's evolved upwardly and somewhat laterally in different ways from Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, into Elden Ring that we are about to follow this with.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to address the get good ethos.
Sure.
In that get good is thrown around as like, if you're having trouble with Dark Souls or a hard game, a game that's testing your mettle or is frustrating you, just get good at it.
Right.
Just be better at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try it enough until you're good at it. I remember for our Monster Hunter Rise episode, almost like a year ago now.
Sure.
Monster Hunter is part of the hit it until it dies genre. Hit it until it dies and don't get hit genre.
Uh-huh.
That's a genre of action game. Dark Souls is one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the get good philosophy that has become so contemporary and equivalent to Dark Souls, it means more than that. It means more than just like, oh, be better.
Yeah.
It means invest in the game, trust the game deeper. There are systems.
You are not wasting your time.
You're not. There are systems in place to help you. You can grab help from other players. There's the way that the checkpoint system and the currency acquisition process works, where you start at a checkpoint, you run your way through all these enemies and acquire souls, and you work your way to the point where you died, and you pick up your souls.
Yep.
And you keep building that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just more currency to level up with, to strengthen your character, to upgrade your weapons and your armor.
Mm-hmm.
There are systems in place to help you. You can cheat. You can cheese the game.
Uh-huh.
The game is cheesing you in return. You know?
Yeah.
That's more the case with Elden Ring, and we'll get there.
Uh-huh.
Dark Souls 1, I would argue, is a little more fair about that. A little more upfront about what it's telling you.
Mm-hmm.
What it's communicating to the player.
Okay.
But it's not an outright malicious game. It's not unfair all the time. It's janky at times, but by design, it's not explicitly unfair.
Mm-hmm.
It's teaching you. It's
Yeah.
guiding you along the way. Getting good just means stick with it. Invest in the game a little deeper. Stick with it a little longer. Try to understand it a little more. And if nothing else, try something else. You know? There's something. You might not be missing something.
Mm-hmm.
You might be missing something.
Yeah.
But you might not be. You might have the right idea, but just like get good is an encouragement. I say.
I was going to say, as annoying as the meme level it has reached I have never actually seen a comment that says "get good," and I felt, oh, that's malicious.
Really?
You know,
some people are just trolling.
Okay. In general, as a sentiment, you are correct. It is an encouragement. It is an invitation to understand the game with me. You know what I mean? Implying that I understand what's actually going on. I mostly don't. You know what I mean? I am not good. I am still getting good. But like, yes, I do think it's an encouragement. It is annoying at this point, just that it's kind of a mainstream gamer meme type thing.
It's just shorthand for you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
But as you say, it's in the context of the game, and it is an invitation to, like, it is possible. Like, stick with it, dare I say. You know, I don't necessarily detect malice.
Perhaps we run in different gaming circles. Perhaps we've invested in different historical and contextual parts of the Dark Souls development.
You've certainly been in the circle longer than I have.
Perhaps. However,
Elden Ring has been fairly encouraging.
That is interesting to hear. In the spirit of sticking with it, how about you all, audience, stick with us as we return soon with some more FromSoftware action, some more FromSoftware excitement, and even less Nintendo investment in part 2 of our FromSoftware series, where we are going to dive maybe even deeper into Elden Ring.
That's right. We're no Nintendo here. Non-Nintendo game.
Yeah, we're getting into like uncharted territory, uncharted waters. I'm a little scared.
I think we'll be okay.
Do you think so?
It'll be on Nintendo one day, like in 10 years.
My fingers and toes and otherwise are crossed.
Alright, friends. Well, I'm going to get us out of here. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. If you are not subscribed to us on the podcast platform that you're listening to us on right now, please just hit that button. It really means a lot, and it'll help us find new listeners, which is just exciting for us. You know, we want to be popular. Tell us we're cool.
Yeah, even though we know already.
Right. Also on Instagram, we post some cool stuff. If you're not following us there, please do. And on that note, we will see you soon with a brand new episode. Hope you enjoyed this one
of the FromTendo podcast.
Yeah. My name is Braden.
And I am Connor.
And we'll see you next time.
Love you.